Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee. Today, we're going to have one topic, which is a briefing on the Policing Advisory Commission, also known as the PAC. And as we begin, I'd like to ask President Hucker or Vice President Albornoz, committee members, if they have any opening statements. No?
I'm fine, Mr. Chairman. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a visitor. We have Councilmember Reimer. Did you have anything as an opening thought, Councilmember? I see his picture. He might have stepped away from the screen. And as we begin, I wanted to very publicly thank Carlos Camacho, who's a legislative analyst, and Susan Farag, who's also a legislative analyst, for really doing a marvelous job writing this packet. And we certainly wanted to thank and welcome Dalvin Osorio, who's the chair of the Policing Advisory Commission, here as well. And if you have any opening thoughts as well, Mr. Osorio.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. I also want to echo your words about Carlos and Susan, who've been just absolutely a godsend for us as we navigate what you all know is very tricky work. They've made at least my job as chair much easier. So I thank them for all their help over the last year and some change.
Well, thank you. We don't want to give them too much praise. We don't want their heads have to fit on the screen. I mean, my goodness. So anyhow, we like to tease them, as you can tell. But what I'm going to do is ask, I guess it's Carlos, are you going to lead us through the packet as we go, and then?
Yeah, I can go through the packet and then turn it over to, Susan or Mr. Rosario or committee chair for any comments, questions,
Okay.
So forth. Sure. So I can begin. The Policing Advisory Commission was created in 2019 by the Montgomery County Council via Bill 1419. It was established in response to the ongoing public dialogue around policing practices, and really as an effort to increase community involvement in matters of public safety and policing. So in Bill 1419, the Commission's duties are described as to advise the Council on policing matters, provide information regarding best practices on policing matters, recommend policies, programs, legislations, or regulations, comment on matters referred to by the Council, conduct at least one public forum for community input on policing matters, engage in public education, and submit an annual report. And so the structure of the PAC, and I apologize, there's a typo here. So the PAC is actually composed of 13 public voting members and 2 ex officio members, which represent the Montgomery County Police Department and the police union. The PAC decided early on in its tenure to divide themselves into 4 subcommittees. So there's currently the Discretionary Policing Subcommittee, the Emergency Response Subcommittee, the Hiring and Discipline Subcommittee, and the Safety in Schools Subcommittee. And more details regarding the work done by each subcommittee can be found in the PAC's annual report on circles 3 through 8. The PAC currently meets twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of each month. Members of the public regularly attend PAC meetings, as well as staff from MCPD and other county staff. All meetings are recorded and the videos are put on the PAC website. In terms of specific initiatives that the PAC has undertaken, so they've collaborated with different organizations working on matters of policing within the county. So there was the County Executive's Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, the audit of MCPD that's still ongoing, led by the Effective Law Enforcement for All. Various advocate groups have gone and attended PAC meetings like Silver Spring Justice Coalition, just to name one. Different county public safety agencies like MCPD, but also Emergency Fire and Rescue, members from the Maryland General Assembly, and of course the County Council. So one of the things that the PAC did was to review the recommendations issued by the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. And each subcommittee kind of went through the recommendations that fit under their purview. And they endorsed the broad conclusions of the report and emphasized the nature of how important this data collection and review exercise was. They are also currently reviewing and going to offer input on the preliminary recommendations of the MCPD audit. The PAC plans to share a finalized document with the council and other stakeholders regarding their insights on the audit. The PAC has also formally commented on several pieces of legislation, such as Bill 3420, Police Disciplinary Procedures, Bill 4520, Community Policing Data, which was just recently passed, and Bill 4620, Police School Resource Officers Prohibited. In terms of kind of how the PAC has gotten the community involved, so the PAC held a public hearing on June 14th, 2021, to give members of the public the opportunity to share their thoughts and experiences on the issue of drug enforcement in the county. So the PAC heard from different community members on their experiences with regards to arrests or any interactions they've had with MCPD that resulted in a stop and frisk or a search and drugs. Community members were encouraged to submit written audio or video testimony or to register and provide testimony live during the PAC meeting. The PAC is also currently focusing its efforts on traffic enforcement. They're currently gathering public input as well on people's experiences with traffic enforcement to get a better sense of how MCPD's policies kind of are applied in practice. Tonight, actually, the PAC will have a meeting with MCPD to get further information on traffic enforcement and their policies in practice. The last PAC meeting, the PAC actually hosted Office of Legislative Oversight to give a presentation on their report on reassigning traffic enforcement from MCPD to MCDOT. And so this entire effort of data gathering and gathering community input on traffic enforcement will eventually lead to the PAC offering recommendations to the council and to the MCPD on traffic enforcement. And then the last piece that I'll touch on are just some of the challenges that the PAC has faced. Just like any other committee or new commission or board, you know, there's going to be some growing pains in the first year. So the PAC is now has been established for a year and a half now, and they're now kind of getting to the substantive issues around policing. So, and I'll let Mr. Osorio talk about this more, but you know, because there's so much going on, the PAC decided to switch to a 2-meeting-a-month kind of structure. However, this led to some attendance issues, given the fact that all PAC members are volunteers and they have other jobs and priorities outside of the PAC. So the PAC is currently deliberating whether to keep with this structure or to revert back to a one meeting a month kind of structure. I will note that the legislation only requires the PAC to meet 6 times a year, and the PAC has met many more times than that. Also, the PAC has strived to form a productive working relationship with MCPD. The PAC cannot do this work alone. So they have definitely collaborated with MCPD. They've requested information and data on numerous occasions, and MCPD has been very responsive. However, MCPD has, you know, acknowledged some of the difficulties they have with their records management system. They are in the process of procuring a new records management system, and then along with Bill 4520, which just passed on community policing data, the PAC and MCPD both that this will help in data collection and sharing. So with that, I will pass it on to Ms. Farag, Mr. Osorio, or Committee Chair Katz.
Ms. Farag, did you have anything else to?
Sure. Carlos covered everything really well. I just wanted to add that COVID has actually been really a blessing in disguise in terms of being able to get community engagement. Even though it's Zoom and it feels remote, everybody can join on Zoom, and these the commission meetings are all recorded, so they're available at any time. And there actually is a lot of community participation or attendance. I'm on a different commission, and I attend many others. And this is the most, you know, community engagement that I've seen on commissions around the county recently, for sure.
Very good. Mr. Osorio.
Thank you, Councilmember Gerando, Councilmember Reamer, Council President Hucker, Councilmember Katz, Councilmember Albornoz. First off, Carlos did a really good job of just highlighting the work that we've done over the last year. I have the unique distinction of being the vice chair for the first year and then now the chair for the last like 4 or 5 months or so. And I think that lends me a unique perspective. I think that on one hand, I think that there is a lot of good that has come out of our work, right? I think that we have created space for community members that maybe aren't typically part of the process, right? Members who just don't generally have the opportunity due to work schedules or due to, familial responsibilities to really be a part of the civic engagement process in our county, right? And those are the people that, are most impacted by policing in our county, I feel, right? We live in an incredible place in Montgomery County, but we also know that it being an incredible place doesn't mean that it's immune to a lot of the difficulties that are around the country, right? We know that as a fact. And so for us, we're about to hit the 1.5 year mark of a 3-year charge for us. And I think we're trying to figure out the best way to ensure that the recommendations that we make to you guys are heeded, right? And that are implemented with fidelity. I think we want to make sure that we don't go back to this idea pre the PAC where I think, and the Reimagining Safety Task Force touched on this in their report. The audit touched on this in their report too, where MCPD kind of feels like they're immune to improvements, or that they feel like they're perfect just the way they are, because if they were, you guys wouldn't have passed the legislation unanimously to appoint us, right? So some of the challenges I think that we've had stem from some of that attitude, right? The attitude that, things could be worse. And while in theory they could be, that does not mean that we just kind of skate by on our laurels or skate by on the fact that, we can be better, right? So we are trying to figure out the best way to make the best use of our time. We're trying to make sure that MCPD, and Carlos touched on this a little bit, MCPD has been, I think, a willing partner, but I think at times their processes don't allow them to be as willing as I think they really want to be. And I would be remiss if I did not shout out, and I'll tell you this, when we were first elected as commissioners, we thought the Fraternal Order of Police would have been a barrier to us. And they've been a much more open partner with us than MCPD. And that's surprising to me. And I'll just say that, so shout out to Sergeant Brewer for being as open as she has been in terms of offering us actual suggestions as to how to improve training for law enforcement in our county, right? But it's very interesting to watch the FOP be so willing to partner with us and MCPD kind of hide behind the processes that are in place to not get us the information that we ask for, right? And so that's something we're trying to figure out. We understand that, folks have other people to respond to and other people to answer to, but we want to make sure that in 1.5 years, when our charge is over, you're not appointing another police advisory commission because we didn't do what we were supposed to do. We want to make sure that we do exactly what we were tasked to do.
Well, very good. Well, first off, thank you personally and the PAC in general for all that you do. There's always surprises when someone gets directly involved, and this is an advisory group. I mean, it seems like you've been in existence longer than 1.5 years, and some of that 1.5 years is figuring out, what to do and how to do it, and this worked and that didn't work, and everything needs to work together, and collaboration becomes so very important. Where no one is looking to have someone as an enemy. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to go forward so that everyone can do their job and do it professionally and effectively and transparently and go down the list. And so you certainly have been great partners in this and continue to be. And there's always going to be, I didn't think of it that way. Let's think of it in a different way. I can tell you, last Friday, I went to the award ceremony. They have them quarterly, I believe. The award ceremony for the Montgomery County Police Department, where people literally save someone else's life, risk theirs to save somebody else's life. And you and the PAC members and others, candidly, should be there as well. Because you do hear, the negative. And there's going to be, you can't have somebody that tells somebody you can't do that and have everybody say, well, that was really pleasant that they told me. It's just not going to always happen. But when you we need to see both sides of what somebody does and continue to do that. So, that's something that we should keep in mind. I do know that you have done so much work in the year and a half, whatever. You've worked, had public forums on drug enforcement. We can go down the list, and that's always helpful. And you hear directly from the public, and the fact that you've gone to two meetings a month, in one respect, and I guess either Carlos or Susan pointed this out, in one respect, because you've gone to two meetings because you're doing so much work. In another respect, somebody says, well, so-and-so didn't show up at every meeting. Well, we have to make choices. Either you have to figure out that not showing up at every meeting is not as important as the work that you're doing, or that showing up at every meeting is. I mean, they're another growing pain. I mean, so that's something we have to keep in mind. And I know that they talked about the audit committee, the audit recommendations, and it would be helpful to me, and I'm sure we're going to hear from others as well, if you could prioritize some of those top changes, because there's so many.
Yep.
And when everything is number one, nothing is number one, and that's not fair either. And I do think that that's very important. And the other thing, and I'll stop and turn to my colleagues, but, we don't want someone to fail. If a records management software or whatever was not effective, we need to make certain that we, the council, pays for, make certain that the funds are there so that we can get the tools necessary so someone can do their job. For us to say, we want you to do this and not give someone the tool to do it, that's not fair either. And we have to give them time for all the glitches to be worked out. I mean, so we need to literally be hand in glove and get this done. And I sincerely believe, and I've have many friends who were police officers over the years, I sincerely believe every one of them wants to do a very good job. They went into this line of work. I mean, there's always an exception, but they went into this line of work to help somebody as their neighbor, to save somebody's life. And we don't always, we look at their negative and say, well, you did this. The fact that they saved 10 other people's lives, we talk about the one problem that they had. We need to work together to figure out how they can do their job in a better way. And with that, I'm going to turn to Council President Hucker, then Council Vice President Albernaz, and then I will turn to our two visitors. And though Mr. Osari already said hello to Councilmember Jawando, already said hello to Councilmember Reamer, I will also say hello to Councilmember Jawando, and we'll get to him in a second. But President Hucker, please. And you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to everybody for being here, and for Susan for your great packet. And I'm certainly grateful to Councilmember Reamer for driving this forward and sponsoring the legislation to establish the PAC, and everybody who applied for it and got appointed to it and serves on it. It's a tribute to Montgomery County that we have so many talented people putting themselves forward. And thanks to Albert for everything you're doing to chair it. So we're all in receipt of the letter from the community advocates, and we're grateful to them for their unpaid hours of monitoring and feedback. There's great hopes for this commission, and we all need their feedback. I try to get all the advice that I can. And we expect that in year one of anything, to the chairman's point, there's always growing pains. Let me just ask a few specific questions on their things, and I know you've seen it, so you have the opportunity to think about the response. What do you do when members have to miss meetings?
So I, myself and our vice chair reach out to members pretty consistently. I think one of the things, and a buzzword in the county now is like racism is a public health crisis, right? But we also are in the middle of a public health crisis, right? And folks have lost people, right? And I think we try to extend as much grace as possible, because I think every commissioner brings a unique blend of experience. But yeah, so I reach out to folks just to let them know, like, these are the rules. Because for the first year, to be fair, we didn't enforce the attendance policy just because it was in the middle of the pandemic. It just didn't seem it seemed pretty punitive to do that. But we are trying to tighten that up now. And one of the things that Carlos mentioned, we are considering going back to maybe, one meeting a month, with the subcommittee meetings being right before our meeting. That way we maximize our time that way. But I reach out to folks when they miss meetings.
Great. Yeah, no, we've all been part of volunteer committees and we know what it's like, and it's a struggle. We don't expect perfection the first year, but there's always the criticism on the one side, and I'm glad you feel like you're on top of it and you have a plan to respond to it. There's also the question of MCPD missing deadlines for data requests that you've put in. I'm not sure who's here from the police. I don't see anybody with their camera on, but there must be somebody. Yeah.
No.
Ms. Farag, nobody's here?
No, there's nobody here from police today. I did go back and look at all the different formal information requests that the PAC has asked the police department, and there are at least 9 of them, and the police were late on 2, and that was back in the fall of 2020. They were late by about 15 days on the first one ever. Then they were late by another 15 days or 2 on the third request, but everything else they've been meeting on time. And there have been some challenges trying to get information that the PAC wants, because there might be just a difference in the way the 2 entities are looking at data and information, and the PAC asks one way and the police might interpret it the other way. But the police are trying to be, as far as I can tell, as responsive as they can, given the fact that there's been an overwhelming number of Maryland Public Information Act requests at the police department and other operational mandates, both from governmental entities and the public, since police reform has come into the public view. And those volume of requests have been so significant that at one point the county executive even extended the time frame for county departments to respond to MPIA requests. And again, Carlos mentioned, I believe, that there are data limitations within the police department, which the committee is well aware of and working on that. And that there is records management system procurement in process, that the funding, Mr. Chair, is included in the CIP. So it's there. There's no problem there. And they are working toward that as we speak. So they're still ironing things out, but they are trying to do their best to be responsive.
And if I may, Council President, I think the bigger issue isn't, because to Susan's point, again, October 2020, we had only been a PAC for 3 months at that point. So I think it's expected that there's going to be some hiccups. I think and I can speak for some of my fellow commissioners. I think part of the frustration, and it may be an RMS issue, it may be something bigger than that, is if I ask you guys, how many people have applied for rental assistance, right? If I ask you that, you can tell me that, right? You can tell me, we only had 125 applicants. We only had 150 applicants. If I come back and I ask you how many of those applicants are Black or brown, and you can't give me that, I'm going to question why you can't give me that. And so I think one of the frustrations is that MCPD has been good about responding, acknowledging our requests. They just haven't been that great about giving us the information we're asking for. And that's, I think, where some of our frustration comes in, because they'll give us data that outlines some of the stuff we're asking for, that connects to some of the other stuff we're asking for, but they can't give us the other stuff we're asking for because of whatever the case may be. So I think that's where some of our frustration comes from. It's not so much about them not responding as much as it is they're not giving us what we're asking for.
All right, can I jump in a second, please?
You're chairing the meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When that happens, when you ask a question and they say, well, we don't know that, are they then at that point, in some cases, they probably had not collected that data. So at that point, are they then telling or saying, but we are going to start collecting it from then on? How does that work? How's that dialogue?
So I'll give you an example. Part of the impetus for tonight's meeting with Chief Jones is because we asked for something and the responses just weren't right. So for us, what happens is now we have a public meeting where we ask him these questions and try to get these answers. There has been some instances where, for example, there's been information that we've been given maybe by the state, and then we come back and ask MCPD and they're like, well, we don't track that. And that's, there's some confusion there, I think. But this is the first time that this is the first time where the responses haven't been as clear, and so we're pushing back on that a bit. So I can let you know how this goes tonight and see how that process works.
Okay, thank you. I interrupted you, Mr. President. Go ahead.
No, not at all, Mr. Chairman. So Dalvin, that's helpful. Thank you. So thank you, Ms. Frog, for your answer. So 7 out of, I mean, we're all in year 1 of this, so we don't expect perfection again, but 7 out of 9 times they met the deadline. To your point, we're also under unusual circumstances during a pandemic. And this council is very familiar with the fact that the police have, let's say, imperfect data and collection and analysis. And that's why we're all sponsors of a bill to improve that in the future. But moving forward, you're holding a meeting with Chief Jones tonight, you said. Tell me about that meeting.
So as Carlos mentioned, so our initial focus was on drug enforcement. Now we're moving to traffic stops. But we, and to Councilmember Katz's point, right? Like our goal is to make sure that everybody can make it home safely, right? Like that's our goal with any of this, right? And so as we do that, we have to understand what goes into, these traffic stops and traffic enforcement. So we're going to have a public hearing, and we've gotten public testimony for that. Carlos has done a really good job of accumulating some of that. And to Carlos's point, we've actually gotten more, and Carlos, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've gotten more testimony for this one than we did for the last one, which lets us know that at the very least, our outreach to community members is working. But now, so tonight, we're going to meet with Chief Jones and ask him for clarity on some of these questions that they did not provide, very direct answers for or clear answers for.
Okay, thanks. So this is a public meeting. I'm glad you're holding it. Who is your point of contact inside the department, which is a big bureaucracy, for your requests? And who do you meet with privately to try to work out any challenges where they might be able to say, not in a public forum, we collect this, we don't collect that, you're asking for this, we can get you this, we can't get you that, etc., which is sometimes more productive than asking all your questions in a public forum.
Yeah, so Carlos usually sends his requests directly to MCPD for us. So the way it works is our requests come out of our subcommittees, and then they go to Carlos, and then Carlos sends them. It's happened a couple different ways. So Chief Patel has answered our questions in meetings before, where he comes forward and he's like, okay, look, I got your request. This is an answer. For the lengthier requests, say they include more than 5 to 7 questions, Chief Jones will respond via email. He sends them to Carlos, and then Carlos makes the responses available to us. So and Carlos can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming Chief Jones is our point of contact whenever that happens.
Yeah, Chief Jones is our point of contact. And then
is there ever a private meeting?
Different assistant chiefs will respond with greater information, like Assistant Chief Patil or Captain William Montgomery, who was in the Internal Affairs Division, or Captain Coquinos. Different MCPD staff will reach out to me directly with information. I'm sure at the behest of Chief Jones, but Chief Jones is our primary point of contact.
And and to answer your question, Council President Hugger, our subcommittees have met with MCPD officers directly. So as opposed to, and granted, our subcommittees meetings are public, but as a different forum than what you're saying, where it's like us peppering them with questions, so to speak. Like it's 3 subcommittee members meeting with someone from MCPD, and they're able to get, like Captain Coquinos has met with our hiring and discipline subcommittee before. Sergeant Brewer met with the school safety subcommittee before.
Right.
And those, for whatever reason, tend to yield better results than public questions. I
was going to invite that too. I'm all for transparency, but knowing how government works, I just think there should be an answer to the question. If you wanted to meet with an assistant chief and ask a question that they might see as embarrassing, like in the future, in the past we collected this, but we didn't collect that. They may not want to say it here, but they may want to say it to you. So you might want to just have that sort of relationship as well, where you could work with them to improve things in the future, moving forward. And the other point on at the end of the letter, I would just hope you could work with Susan on establishing PAC input on any policing bill. We would love to hear your formal feedback and to make sure that we get responses within the 30 days as they suggested. I'm sure we can do that as well. But I think those are all sensible suggestions in my view. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate all the feedback. I feel like we're making progress here.
Thank you very much. Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see my colleagues, Councilmember Jawando, and they have their hands up, so I know they have questions that or comments.
It will be after you, please.
All right. So well, first, just thank you, Mr. Osadio, for your service, especially for stepping up as chair. It is a critically important position, navigating, as you noted, some very complex waters with the history of where we are right now as a country, and we're not the only jurisdiction working on tackling some of these issues. I'll just note a few things for context. I mean, we had hundreds of people apply for these positions. We got a robust, it was among the most difficult decisions I've had to make through the appointment process onto this commission, because there's such passion and energy. And if there are individuals that for personal or professional reasons are unable to meet the obligations of this critically important work, then we're going to have to move on because it's too important for us to have people miss meetings, miss the context of the meeting before, because these things build off of each other. And if you are not as plugged in, like any organization or body, you're going to not be in a position to fully be able to have the context to be able to weigh in a way that's credible or helpful to all of us. I also noted that apparently there's been frustration that my colleagues and I have not been attending meetings. And that is news to me, quite candidly. And so I want to just say up front, I'm happy to participate in meetings moving forward and look forward to the opportunity. I thought that when we had set up the structure and the communication chain for the incredible work of the committee, that updates like this, so that all of our colleagues could have the benefit of hearing this discourse and discussion, would make more sense than to have each of us individually come with different perspectives, with different opinions on various issues and different subject matter expertise. And so if there is a request to have us come and participate, and if that would be helpful in some way, like me as chair of HHS as an example, coming in that context, or I used to be a co-chair of the county's Positive Youth Development Initiative, feels like forever ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. There's stuff that we can do. I honestly did not want to complicate matters even more, but if it's the will or the interest of your organization or of the body to do that, I'm sure myself and all of my colleagues would be more than happy to come and participate. But I do think we have to think through a reasonable and, for lack of a better term, structured way of doing that, so that it also doesn't appear that for whatever reason, sometimes there's the implication that one of us cares more about this issue than others, and that is way not the case. We're all very deeply committed to this work. So just, I'd like to follow up on that. And
So
I'll also, yes, go ahead, Mr. Osai.
Oh, well, I was going to say thank you for saying that and for that that context for us, because I think and I spoke to Councilmember Reamer last week, right? And then Council President Hucker has popped in, I think, like 2 times. But what you mentioned about just you don't want to give off the impression that like one council member cares about this more than the other. That's, I think, helpful context for us. I think one of the beautiful things about us, and Susan mentioned this, right? Like the fact that we've gotten so much community involvement is a plus. And I think we're viewed, at least in conversations that our vice chair and I have had with community members, as like the middle ground between you guys and the community, right? Like, so if community members had an issue with something and they came to us, the assumption, I think, with a lot of community members is that eventually we'd make it sure that it got to you, whether that's through a letter or through, a tweet at like 11 o'clock at night, because you guys know I'm on Twitter all the time, like whatever it looks like, right? So I think that's been the assumption, but that's good context that you just provided, because I think what we've heard from some community members is that if you guys don't attend, then how important is the work that we do really? And so thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a couple of other thoughts. So I think you guys are bridge builders, or have the opportunity to be bridge builders, within different communities on again, a very complex issues. So I know that early on, there was a condensed version of the police training academy that was offered to each of the members of the committee, but I don't believe the entire committee took advantage of even the abbreviated version of that training. I wonder if there's an opportunity moving forward, acknowledging people's schedules are busy, there's a lot to do, But I do think that there'd be a benefit to having that context and background moving forward. And so revisiting that opportunity, I think would be helpful. I've shared publicly bunches of dozens of times at this point. I've actively been participating in police dialogue, which has been helpful to me, and I think would be helpful to you all as well. Just the final 2 points for now, and I may come back depending on how this discussion goes. But I totally get the frustration that some of the data and analysis you all have requested has not been made available with the clarity that you're looking for. And I think I think we're voting tomorrow on the data and accountability bill formally, and we ended up, I think, having 4 or 5 sessions on that issue. And Councilmember Jawando and Councilmember Reimer have been great leaders here by requesting OLO reports and getting us to a better place moving forward on having more of an infrastructure for that data and analysis. And police and police management have acknowledged that it's lacking and it needs to be improved. And I feel like we're formally taking steps in order to do so. So I would be curious, and this is more for our staff, because I don't expect this incredible but volunteer committee to be able to do this on their own. But if there are requests that have been made that are different than the ones that we have been making through formal legislation, and if there's a delta there, I'd like to know what that is, to see if there's something missing from the equation that maybe we haven't covered in the bills that we've discussed recently, just to make sure that that entire picture is clear. Because I'm happy to hear that the responsiveness may not have been as bad as originally portrayed, but acknowledging that the content is not what we need it to be moving forward. And I think there's universal agreement from all sides on that moving forward. And I guess the last thing I would ask the committee to look into in the upcoming months, in addition to traffic stops, which I think is very important, but I think the recruitment and retention issue is a significant one, and if we don't have officers coming in with training is so critically important. We're investing a lot of time and energy and policy in establishing the infrastructure for better and expanded training moving forward. But if the pool of people applying in the first place is not what it needs to be, then the training is not going to meet its full potential. And I think there's an opportunity for us to, as part of that bridge building, consider how we might address recruitment and retention issues, because I think the public has a role to play here in helping us through ensuring transparency, through ensuring that we move holistically in addressing some of these policy issues, but also being partners and authentic partners and showing what that looks like, so that it doesn't all feel negative, and that there is a great deal positive that's out there as well, that we're going to want to point to and lift up and expand the good stuff too, so that will help with recruitment and retention in many ways. And acknowledging when good work is done, I think is also really important, in addition to calling out the gaps and the issues, which we need to do. But I think that balance is really important. And that's why your voices in that regard carry even more weight, because you are getting so deep into the weeds. And I think that will help with morale and recruitment and retention issues, while we're also, technical issues. So while we're actively and continuing to engage our community and serve as a forum for them to be able to voice their concerns and opinions as well. So those are just a little all over the map there, Mr. Sadio. I apologize, but I wanted to reflections.
No, and that, I think that is helpful. I think for us, so it's twofold, right? And I think we have the unique opportunity to sit with actual officers who are doing this work, right? Like, and that makes us different. right? In that respect, like we're not operating in the abstract. We sit with MCPD 2 times a month, plus whatever emails we have back and forth. I have email threads with Chief Jones where I'm asking him questions, right? Like just because again, I want to make sure that I'm the most effective chair that I can be too, right? I think to your point, Vice President Albornoz, I think we want to make sure that, and Councilmember Jawando, I believe you introduced a piece of legislation on changing the training requirement for law enforcement officers in the county, right? Because I think you want to make sure that people don't feel like they're constantly under attack, right? Like you want to make sure that they're able to do their job, right? Because it's not an easy job, right? If it was, we would have solved crimes 30 years ago and been living in a utopia, right? If it was an easy job, but it's not an easy job. And I think you want to make sure that you reward the folks who are doing this job and doing this job well, right? And Chief Jones, to his credit, you're mentioning, shouting out good work. Chief Jones and I had a conversation where he said he shared a lot of the difficulties that even existed here in MCPD when he first became a police officer, right? And that's helpful context for me, right? Chief Jones is a little older than I am. He comes from a different world than I do, right? So he speaks about a time in the county that I was not here for, right? I think and the one thing that hiring and discipline subcommittee in particular for us has talked about is how do we recruit the best possible people possible, right? And that's across the board, right? That's Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx, LGBTQ, right? Because that shared lived experience then makes it easier, say like you respond to a traffic stop, right? And again, you see somebody that looks like you, it's a little easier to not be rightfully defensive because you think it's going to go in a different direction, right? And that's something that we are committed to doing. When we talk about submitting recommendations to you guys, it's across the board, right? It's training recommendations. It's how do we because realistically, you guys and a lot, Vice President Albornoz and Councilmember Jawando, you guys were elected in 2018, right? Councilmember Reimer, you're running for county executive now, right? Councilmember Katz, you've been here a while. This is your home, right? This is not anything that I'm saying to you isn't new, right? Like you guys know this is your home, right? And so I think for those of us that have moved here and have decided to raise our families here, it buoys us to know like, okay, you know what? They're committed to actually changing this, right? But where we come in is like actually giving you the tangible solutions to do that, the tangible recommendations to do that. And they're across the board for us. So we're looking at everything because even the ELA audit is very, very dense, right? It's like 78 recommendations or something like that. We want to break that down to a point where it's easily digestible for the public. So that way they actually know what the recommendations are and they're tangible recommendations, right? Because if I sit here and I say, well, we're going to implement technology to do X, Y, and Z, that may not mean anything to the layman's person. But if I say we're going to recruit 2,000 police officers and we're going to start them at this salary and this is the training that they're going to undergo, that means something to the community that we're serving, right? It means more to give them something tangible than just to sit here and talk about it in the abstract.
That's really helpful. I appreciate that context, and I agree with everything you just said. I may have more questions later, Mr. Chairman, but for now, I yield back to you.
Thank you very much. I did want to point out, and I'm going to turn to Councilmember Jawando and then Councilmember Reimer right after I make this very quick comment. But I did want to point out that, and to Vice President Albernoz's point, if you want a council member to be there for a topic or whatever, certainly all of us would certainly be there and be helpful. In some cases, when we show up, we become the focus and it takes away from your good work. But I can tell you that, I know that on our councils, from our office staff, many of our office staff have been at your meetings on many more than 1 or 2 or 3 occasions, and that changes throughout. And they give us advice. They give us advice directly to that council member, and of course. Susan and Carlos are there. I mean, so we are hearing from you. It's not like we don't want to hear from you. We do want to hear from you, and we want to work with you the best way that you want us to work with you. And with that, I'm going to turn to Councilmember Jawando and then Councilmember Reimer. Councilmember Jawando, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be with the Public Safety Committee again. I would. Just where you left off, I did want to say I have watched several of the PAC meetings on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I just to the point that Councilmember Katz brought up, just so that to not become the focal point of the meeting, and I didn't even know. I actually didn't even know that where the links were to log in to the meeting. I didn't have that on. So happy to attend any others, but I feel like I have participated. I have watched. But happy to be there in any formal or informal capacity. Really appreciate the work that you all are doing, and glad that was raised in this context. I a couple things I wanted to say. I think I don't understand why no one from MCPD is here. I think there should be someone here. I know that the liaisons change. Different people attend your meetings based on the topics, but I think to discuss an advisory committee that's making recommendations on policing and to have no one here from the police department, it doesn't make sense for me as a council member to ask the questions I'd like to ask. Also, I don't think it sends the right message to the public about the seriousness with which the PAC should be engaged. I don't know why that happened, but I think going forward, it would make sense to have them here, someone here from
Councilmember Jawanda, that's my error. That is nothing on the police department itself. I didn't invite anybody from the police department for this meeting, but we can wrap that up and make sure that happens the next time.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just think it would be helpful to, especially with the issues that we're talking about here. I wanted to get a specific example from you, Mr. Osorio, about the information, because that you aren't or aren't getting. And if you could just use a very specific example or two, I think is not in generalities of something you've requested that, and then what you got back that wasn't either full or, late aside. And we talked about that. We should, timeliness is important, but the content I would argue is more important. I often say I'll take a slow yes as opposed to a fast no any day. I think I have been frustrated as a council member with the ability to get information. And there's always some of that exists within government. I've worked at various levels of government. There's always, the oversight bodies never get the information as quickly as they want. But I think some entities can be more frustrating than others. So I would love to hear in a specific example of information that you're requesting or have requested that you did not get full or complete information.
Sure, not a problem. So one of the questions that we asked related to traffic enforcement, and the question, I'll read it out loud for you, was how does MCPD measure the success of its anti-accident efforts? What metrics are used to measure the success of anti-accident activities? That was the exact question that we asked. In their response to us, they said their progress is measured by efforts or the amount of time and resources that are devoted to any area of the county. Sorry,
One sentence. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there others?
Yeah, hold on. So we had asked a question pertaining to ODP and how do they identify stop violations. The question was, currently data from ODP does not identify the stop violation, the violation on the basis of which the officer is stopped. Sorry. Their answer. So we asked them a question about how do they identify the stop violation. Their response was that the data is included in the state maintained enforcement records.
But no link to the record or any sort of, okay. Yeah, I think this is a problem that's not an isolated incident. And the authority you have to request information is a delegated authority from the county council. We created the entity so that you could get the information. Councilmember Reimer introduced legislation. I worked with them on it and everyone passed it. And we, to Councilmember Albenhauser's point, worked really hard. 200 some people applied and we appointed people, very qualified folks. I also agree on the engagement point. If there aren't people that can't make it for whatever reason, there's so many people that wanted to, that we should, you should let us know that so that we can, address that, because that is definitely there's not a lack of people who are interested in these issues. But, I will just say, for example, we passed the use of force law. And part of that law required the police department to meet with vulnerable populations that were enumerated in the law. Our elderly, our folks with disabilities, children, pregnant women. It listed a list of folks and develop use guidelines about how to interact in a use of force context and with those populations, right? So it had two requirements: to meet with them and groups that represented that, and then put out separate guidelines. That's a law that was passed. Neither one of those things were done, and to this date have still not been done. They did not meet with anybody in those populations and did not issue the guidance with the use of force. So
if I may, because we have an example based off something similar you said. So we had asked about marijuana stops while we were doing our work on drug enforcement arrests, and we shared that the state attorney said that Maryland doesn't prosecute for low-level marijuana arrests, and we asked for the data around that, and Chief Patel, the data that was provided didn't match what the data that the state had provided was. So then we went back and asked the follow-up question, and we were told that that data isn't, they don't keep track of that. So first data was provided, and then we were told that that data is that data isn't tracked. So I think it speaks to, just a bit of a disconnect between the law and what is actually being done.
Right. So I say that to say to hope, and not only just to get it out there that that's happening, but to make you not feel bad, because there's laws we pass that direct specific things that aren't being complied with. And I think that, again, that happens in government. It's a problem. It's a particular problem with an issue like this, where we need for the work that we want to happen, the trust to happen, the accountability, the oversight to happen. You have to have responsiveness and complete communication and engagement and buy-in to what we're trying to do. And so I would just, I bring it up because I understand your frustration. It's something that I think I'm sure I'm not alone with having that. And I think, we need to do better on our part on an oversight to make sure you're getting the information in a timely fashion and it's complete. And so, I think that, some sort of follow-up session or, where we can ask the department about these things. We've been having, one thing we've been doing on the council this year is having oversight meetings so that we don't have to do all this in the budget of like, hey, the things we've asked you to do, where are they? What's going on with them? And in various agencies. And I think this is a set of issues that warrant that type of oversight and engagement. So I just wanted to mention that to you, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing. I will work with colleagues to make sure that, we help you follow up on these things, and our staff does, because it's really important. You can't build the trust, and you all can't make your recommendations to us. And that was going to be my last question. Are there any things that have not made their way to us by way of, I know sometimes you've sent letters. Is there anything that we should be looking out for by way of recommendations, which is what we created you to do, to analyze data, use the expertise, and make recommendations to us, and to educate the public? That's also one of the mandates in the law. You can't do that if you don't get the information. And we can't do our job if we don't have the information, whether it's a direct ask from a council member or a delegated ask through you all. So I just want to make sure you know how important we know that is, and we're going to be working on that. But to the last question I'll ask, and I'll yield the floor, are there anything that we need to know or that's coming down the pike that is by way of recommendations from you all?
Yeah, so we just had our subcommittee submit just their recommendations based off of the audit that was completed, just so that way we can formulate that into an actual document and submit that to you guys, like just where we agreed, where we delineated from their recommendations, if we had actual like different steps that you guys can take. So that you will hopefully receive within the next 30 days. So you'll get that. And then after we finally have the traffic stop public hearing, you'll get recommendations about that from us as well in the form of a letter. And then our hope and as chair, I take it very seriously, is that by June we'd give you, because that'll be our 2-year mark, right? At that point, we'll give you a draft of what our formal recommendations would be and what our work for the last year is going to be. I think you mentioned, Councilmember Jawando, the public education piece. I think one of the things that we've been trying to make sure that we do is that we educate the public in different ways, right? Whether that's through, and granted, COVID makes it a little difficult, but our vice chair and I have gone out into communities and spoken to folks, right? And that's folks that just generally maybe can't pop into meetings, for whatever reason. So we make sure to do that at the very least. So we're hearing from folks who either are disabled or, just have familial responsibilities and stuff like that. But I think I will say we want to make sure that we're able to reach the public without any constraints. And I think it is frustrating when us as a PAC have thought to like, maybe we're going to release a statement outlining some stuff, and we've been told that county attorneys tell us that we can't. And that's a frustration for us as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't express that here today.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, we asked you to educate the public. There should be a way that you can do so, consistent with laws, of course. But all right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I did want to make certain that it is clear that we should not be blaming MCPD today while they're not here. Today was billed. I mean, if it's a mistake made, it's a mistake made. But if they weren't invited, if they didn't know about it, then that becomes my mistake, someone else's mistake, but not their mistake. I did want to point out that it's my understanding, and we've done this in the past too, when we've had an update from the Juvenile Justice Commission. We didn't necessarily have anybody here from Juvenile Services. Maybe we should have, but we didn't. And that's been, so it's just lessons learned for us today. I did want to make certain that it's my understanding that MCPD has met with disability groups, and that they're working on that as well. And as you had pointed out correctly on the use of force bill, the MCPD, it's my understanding, is late, but we need to make certain that they do the work. And if I could point out, Mr. Serio, I think on those types of issues, rather than have them fester, if there again, we give someone the opportunity to say, this is what we want, and if you don't get it, then I think on that next email that you copy us and say, thank you very much. You sent us this, but you didn't send us that, so that we can track it, so that it doesn't get to the point that it's an us against them. It's everybody trying to figure out how to get the information. This is not a gotcha type of deal. This is we're going to figure out a better system kind of, you know what I'm trying to say. So,
and I will say to that point, like that's part of the reason why we went this route, like where we then invited Chief Jones to come and meet with us, right? As opposed to like, I don't know, blasting exactly to avoid a gotcha moment, right? Because I think for us, and I made it a point to mention Sergeant Brewer's work with us, right? Because there are good faith entities working with us, right? I think that sometimes the work can veer and there's different constraints and all that stuff, and we understand that. We just want to make sure that, again, that in a year and a half, you're not appointing another PAC because we didn't do what we were supposed to do.
No, and I think you are trying your level best, and I think they're trying to work with you as best they can. And the other thing to keep in mind, and I know that this is the only thing Chief Jones works on, kiddingly, that he's a busy, and sometimes something else falls through the cracks, and it shouldn't, but the reality is the reality. So we need to work together. And with that, I'm going to call on the very patient Councilmember Hans Reaper, please.
Thank you. Really glad to have this discussion today. Chair Osorio, welcome. It's been great to hear your presentation, and thank you to my colleagues for great dialogue. I'm really absorbing a lot now as we're talking through all of these issues that have been raised. And, I came into the meeting somewhat apprehensive because I've heard a few, I think we've solicited feedback and people have shared concerns. And that's, we want people to share concerns so that we can work on it and improve it. But I am really reminded by our conversation today that this commission has had some significant successes, and the council has had some significant successes that the commission has played a big role in. And a lot of commissions can't, say that, especially after their first year. So, there has been some significant legislation that has been adopted, and the commission as a whole, or commission members in their individual expertise, not representing the commission, but just simply because they're known to us and trusted voices, have helped guide really meaningful change in certain ways. So I think that overall, we should feel great about how far we've come, and I feel like the commission is off to a strong start. Yet, of course, we're going to have to work on it and build it better and stronger and more enduring. And so thank you, Chair Osorio, for becoming chair and for stepping into that leadership role. And your presentation today, I think, has really been affirming about your capacity as a leader for this commission. You know, it's you're setting a great tone, and I appreciate that. So, you know, many of those specific successes or wins were described at the outset. So, you know, maybe I won't repeat them. I can't let it go without commenting that it has been confusing to have multiple civilian commissions, you know, in the public realm at the same time. But I think the executive branch commission is sort of winded down, if I understand it correctly. And, you know, this commission is enduring and will continue, you know, through the coming years. So, you know, over time, hopefully it will become, that role will become clearer for the public and less confusing. I'll just make a lot of the issues that I had wanted to ask about or raise have been addressed. I will just share my own thought about, you know, playing the effective role. I think that as you're doing, like, the commission has had an impact on data already. You know, I think that was like coming in, that was a strategic issue that you selected where you had some expertise, you could take some time to do some review, and then you could share various recommendations with us. And at the same time, there's legislation moving through the council, and, you know, we were able to have an impact there. You know, I think choosing those fewer numbers of strategic issues and going through that deliberative process, you know, at the commission to devise a policy recommendation or set of recommendations to us is a way to be effective, and not, you know, you're there for the day-to-day to the extent that council wants to consult you, or I think you're invited to testify on legislation. But I did want to get into that issue that was raised when you have sought to have a voice and you've been told that you can't. So, you know, my understanding is that, yeah, I guess commissions have to have the approval of the council or the county or the county executive in order to testify in Annapolis. But I wasn't sure that, I don't think that was intended to apply to comments to the county council. Susan, can you, well, again, can you maybe, Mr. Osorio, can you share a little bit more about what that was? And let's just talk about that for a brief second. And Susan, if you have anything you can share there.
Yeah, sure. And I will say, like, Susan may have made a mistake and not invited him to do. That's the first mistake she's made in a year and a half. I feel like
I wanted to say, can I just comment on that? I do think it would be a good practice for us to have a joint dialogue with the commission and the department at the county council, because I think it builds that culture. And so I just think as a habit or as a practice, we ought to do that when the commission comes to the council for its regular check-in. I think having the department there is useful for a lot of reasons. So I'm glad that was mentioned and acknowledged that MCPD wasn't invited today, and that's okay. We'll do it differently next time.
And even Susan's allowed to make a mistake. Even Susan. Now, notice Carlos didn't, but even Susan.
Carlos keeps me on track. That's a full-time job.
I understand. And me and Susan keeps me on track.
Right. So to your point, Councilmember Reimer. So our vice chair and I, and most of our commissioners wanted to release a statement pertaining to. And Carlos, do you remember what exactly it was?
I don't, but I can do some research on what that issue
I
was.
know one of them was you wanted to call on the police chief to release the body-worn camera footage in the Ryan LaRue officer-involved shooting. And we asked the county attorney about, not the county attorney, our legislative attorney, about the propriety of that. And they have indicated that it's improper for the PAC to be releasing press releases to that effect. And if they wanted to make statements, they should direct it to the council.
Right. And that, I think, a few of us had concerns about that, because I think part of educating the public, right, is educating them on when there's gross miscarriages of injustice, right? And that, to most of us, felt like that, right? And we understand that, you know, You have to let things play out and all that jazz. We get all that. But I think it does. I think our responsibility, we were appointed by you guys, right? And so our responsibility is not only to make sure that, you guys can tout this as a positive, right? Like, okay, we did good work, but that also that the community that we have to go back to feels like we represented them appropriately, and not that we were, either withholding information from them or not being as transparent as possible. And so for us, we're always trying to find different ways to reach them. And we did, and Susan was great about it. Susan reached out and she said, look, this is exactly what they said, and we took that at face value. It's just, to us, that seems a little against the public education piece that we were charged with doing.
So you wanted to issue a statement on a matter of public interest, and you were advised that that was not the commission's role. Well, that's interesting. I mean, personally, I guess I would have thought you had a little bit more independence to make those kinds of statements. I think it'd be worth finding out a little bit more about the legislative nature of the law, what the basis was for the recommendation that you received from council attorneys. Okay. Thank you.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
In a case like that, there again, this is, we're hearing about it now, but in a case like that, you certainly could have sent us being the county council, that same question, request, whatever, and then let us take it from there. I mean, just to say, okay, we can't do it, and to let it end is not always necessarily the final answer. I mean, and so, and there's certain things that we didn't get the information, I mean, it's an ongoing investigation, and we want to be fair on all sides, and, everybody has to have their due process. So I think that those types of things is working through the system, however it has to be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly you're always encouraged to send a communication to the county council weighing in on an issue.
Yeah.
But I would think you'd be able to make statements as a body if you want, if the body agreed to do that. I think that you'd be able to do that. But I think we'll have to look into what the statute says and why that was not supported by a council attorney. Okay, but again, I think the charting out bigger topics, doing background work, some of that careful, detailed work, helping us develop an issue, bringing an issue to us to develop, and then, hopefully ultimately being there to work through a solution. A lot of us are interested in traffic enforcement. You've talked about that today. That's a complicated issue and one where we need your expertise. And I think the commission can have, a big impact through a studious program, and one that, I love the public hearing that you organized. And I thought that was terrific, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Last thing I want to mention, I have heard a fair bit about attendance, and is there a plan to develop a certain requirement for participation on the meetings? Can you just comment on that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, so I think our what we're trying to figure out is, one, do we merge some subcommittees to kind of lessen the amount of, just to kind of increase the bandwidth for some of them, right? So one of the things that you had mentioned is that, for example, we took the focus of data, right? That was one of the things that we really wanted to work on, right? That was a subcommittee of 3 people working on that, right? So now if we merge a couple of subcommittees, and it's 6 people working on that, and it doesn't feel like you're carrying all this work on your own, right? Like, instead of it just being spread amongst 3 commissioners, it's now spread amongst 6. So that's because I think part of it, yes, I think is, everything that's going on, and folks have different requirements and different, I think, interests in carrying some of this stuff out. I think also some of it, if I may, I think some of it is like some of the frustration with some of the stuff that we've been dealing with during this time, right? Like, again, I mentioned earlier, Sergeant Brewer in particular, right? But I think if folks see that we're hamstrung, then they're not going to make an effort to attend 2 meetings a month, right? If folks feel that we have no teeth, if they feel that we're window dressing, then they're going to feel like, all right, well, I don't really have to attend that, right? Like, me going to this is way more important than me doing this, because nothing tangible is going to come out of that, right? And so I want to make sure that that's captured, because I think some of the frustration that has led to some of the attendance issues is in part because of that. But myself as chair, I think for me, I'm trying to find creative ways to ensure that folks are attending, but also adhering to the attendance policy, right? Because as you guys mentioned, you guys did have a very, very qualified pool to pick from, right? And if, merging subcommittees to lessen the work on folks doesn't help, then it is, replacing folks with some of the other qualified folks that you had that can work through some of this frustration. But I don't want that to get lost. I want to make sure that folks get that too. I think a lot of it is the frustration in the uphill climb that we're under, right? Because Sergeant Brewer's been great, right? Like she's been good, but I think that there have been absolute barriers put in our way to some of this work that we're doing. And I think that has lent itself to folks not being as committed to the work as they should be.
Okay, well, I appreciate that candid explanation. And, we need the full attention of the executive branch to this commission and the full engagement and support for this commission and, a kind of an ongoing dialogue and work effort here. So, I hope we can figure out some ways to bring you more support, whether that's just through, we really support what you're doing and we're seeing some value here, and we want our members to know that we feel like you're making an impact, but also when there's specific issues, our staff can try to help intervene and make sure you're getting what you need. Let's see this thing grow and strengthen. I think there was some challenge with muddying of the waters around the role of one body and then another body and, so forth. But we got to get this partnership kind of built here and built to last. So thank you for being patient and sticking with it. And let's keep working on it.
Thank you very much. Vice President Albornoz.
No, just as we're talking, and it's just so helpful to have this conversation for so many different reasons, and it cuts both ways. I mean, I think we should, as council members, be more proactive in seeking your guidance as we're considering bills and legislation and community input and feedback. So I, for one, will start reaching out more, and I look forward to a discussion we're going to set up at a later time. But I think this has been helpful, and I do think, while it would have been better to have MCPD here to respond to some of the specific questions and concerns that were raised, I also think in some ways it was good for us to lay the foundation for the next conversation as well, because like the back and forth, I'm not sure how productive that would have been, but I do think that there's an opportunity for us to learn a lot more from this moving forward. So. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate this discussion this afternoon.
Thank you, as do I. I guess we have to decide on some of these work sessions on whether they're going to be an update or whether they're going to be a debate. And in this case, I'm glad it was an update. I mean, I think we needed it. It was something that's probably a little overdue. Now that you've gotten your feet good and wet on this whole thing, and maybe we should have, if you say you're going to do it quarterly, those 3 months roll around in a hurry. They say that a month never moves as quickly until you get a mortgage, and then you realize how fast a month happens. But I think that we need to have more of a good dialogue. Please, to everyone else's point, please reach out. Don't just wait for a formal discussion. You let us know. You have a discussion. You let Susan and Carlos know that we need to have a one-on-one or whatever it is necessary to get there. But bottom line is, to me, when this whole idea was formed and that we would have a policing advisory commission, I never get it right. I always say a police advisory commission, but it's a policing advisory commission. When we first decided to do this, I believe that we have gotten to the point for the education side and everything else that we need to just make certain that we're doing more and more of how we are handling this, and to work together on all these topics. Council President Huckley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has gone on for a while, and my memory is getting worse every day. Can you remind me? I know we had 200 talented people apply for the commission. Did we not set up any alternates who might be able to serve in the case that commission members?
You have experts on this call, but I don't believe we set up any alternates. Did we, Carlos or Susan?
I don't believe so, no.
No, and I don't think I don't think it's by the legislation we were able to do that. I don't know.
We might not, but as you know, I represent us all in the WSTC, and you know, our rep, we have an alternate and a voting member. It just might make sense, given that this is a volunteer commission of very important topics, to have a few alternates that can serve, you know, can sub in and vote in the event that people who are busy and talented can't make a meeting.
Well, but you
might want to amend it.
But to Vice President Albernaz's point, some of these meetings, one feeds off of the other. And the fact that you have a person there doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, the alternate would have to follow all the meetings as well.
Be up to speed. Yes.
So, you know, that's something to think about. Go ahead, please continue.
No, fair enough. I had a memory, obviously incorrect, that we had alternates, but that might be a strategy in the future if we have attendance issues.
Yeah. Councilmember Reimer.
I just wanted to raise a quick point. You know, a few have asked me about the fact that we're adding 2 more council members, and does that have any consequence for the commission membership? I think the answer, I'm gonna get out on a limb here, but I think the answer is no, because we did not tie specific council seats to a specific council member, and the council as a body will receive and recommend, you know, future members or replacement members to the commission. And I don't think we would feel that the commission needs to add members just because the council has added members. So when there are vacancies in the future, the council will act as a body on those replacements, and it's not tied to any specific council member.
Mr.
And as we go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm not sure that's quite right. As you know, that was very involved with this point. I do think that every council member made a nomination.
That's it.
Right.
And it could be that now the body did decide in the end, but every council member put forth a name. So I guess that could still be consistent with more council members, but because some people put the same people and we ranked them and all, so we'd have to figure that out. But every council member did put forth a name, and that is in the legislation.
It is, but it wasn't that the person that you nominated necessarily had to live in your district. And of course, at this point, we won't even know until we have the districts where some people live, whether they live in the same district as they used to, or whether they live in a new district. You know, I mean,
it might be that because of the legislation, if there's a future vacancy, each council member might nominate a replacement. I wasn't necessarily commenting on that as much as the actual determination for who will join the commission. It is a decision of the body as a whole.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so, it doesn't have to follow that because the council has more members that membership would change. It's still going to be the council as a body. But to Councilmember Joanna's point, I don't recall how the mechanics of the nomination process will work exactly, and that would require just a little verification.
I think it was each council member had a nomination, but it didn't necessarily have to be where that person lived in their district. And see, Dobbin, we have some growing pains too. So these things happen. Yeah. Anyone else on today? Carlos or Susan, do you have anything as we wrap this up?
Nope.
No. All righty. Well, thank you very, very much, Dobbin. It's good seeing you, by Zoom or otherwise, and we thank you and the Policing Advisory Commission for all that you do, and we will and need to continue our good discussions. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, guys.
We're adjourned. Thanks.